by strengthened. If you don't think giving them a divine warrant strengthens them, then of course we have no quarrel. But I think that a lot of people were prevented from seeing what was wrong about slavery because they said it was mandated in the Bible, which it is. I think I personally would have to say that I doubt whether the Roman Catholic Church's description of Jews as collectively, indefinitely responsible for deicide had nothing to do with the massacre of the Jews of Europe. I have a feeling that the two things are connected. I can't absolutely prove it, but I wouldn't trust any disproof either.
Here we have, ironically, I may be a better Marxist than you, although you have a richer background in that belief system, where I just think that, people create whatever ideological justification they need, ideology defined broadly to include religion, for what they are motivated to do by material, political, economic, self-interested, factors. And so there we just disagree, and there's probably no point in belaboring that argument.
I certainly, German imperialism wanted to take the property of the Jewish people of Germany and dispossess them of it. There's no question about that, and of other countries too. But the power of the anti-Semitic ideology on which they were able to draw came from generations of religious miseducation and lying. About the Jews being an alien and evil people.
But isn't it worth noting that I'm sure you have to respond to this point all the time. No doubt you've got a great response, but isn't it notable that Hitler, and for that matter, the sponsors of pretty much all of the great atrocities of the 20th century, Stalin, Mao, and so on, seem not to have been theists?
Oh, to the contrary. Hitler's first political action was a concordat with the Vatican. Well,
he was a politician, of course. See, this is what I mean. You are so selective in when you decide to attribute cynicism to someone's use of religion, okay? In that case, the fact that he deployed religion for political purposes, because he was a bad guy, you say reflected real religiosity.
No, I didn't say that.
I'm not denying that religion can be used to bad ends.
It's ridiculous to say that he was secular or atheist. Otherwise, why would the German Army belt buckle have said God on our side? Why would
to inspire
I'll take a trivial point.
Who were themselves religious,
I'll take a trivial point. Hitler's birthday was celebrated from the pulpits in Germany by order of the churches every year of his time.
That doesn't reflect on his own true religiosity.
Don't call him secular then. I only know of one place in official Europe. Now, I think there probably is only one where you can still see a swastika on a display. It's in the huge basilica near the Escorial outside Madrid. That is one of the places where Franco is buried. It was built with slave labor from the Republican losers of the Civil War. There's a swastika on the ceiling when you look up to honor the German contribution to the victory of Catholic Spain over atheism. And there's also a German steel helmet in the mosaic. I'm sorry, you might not know this, but you irritate me and you potentially insult me by suggesting that my opinions are to be grouped with National Socialism. I won't have it, in other words.
Wait,
the guilt is on the other side.
Oh, you mean because I'm saying
secularism and atheism are not part of the hideous system of fascism, which, in my opinion, was mainly a product in southern and Balkan Europe of the Catholic clerical right wing.
You take it as an affront to you personally and an indictment of you personally if I point to an atheist who has done something bad.
I say I don't like even the suggestion of it. I'm being as mild as I can.
And do you similarly exercise the restraint you're asking me to exercise by not suggesting in the presence of any religious person, including a very good one, that any other religious person has ever done anything bad? Are you similarly considerate of their feelings as you're asking me to be?
No, I'm not saying you mustn't hurt my feelings.
No,
I'm saying
you
ought to be aware that you're doing so. It looked to me as if you didn't realize that you were making. It looked to me as if you were, without knowing it, so I forgive you, making an insinuation.
So it's something that needs forgiving. Well, then when you do the comparable thing with religious people, does that need forgiving? Is that something that should be forgiven?
Well, the Catholic Church has tried and failed to apologize for its generations
That's
of
not, Christopher, don't change the subject.
No,
what I'm asking is this. I mean, this is really,
exactly where
this is such a typical debating point by you, okay?
I'm sorry. if there was nothing in what I said, the Vatican wouldn't have kept on trying to apologize for its years of anti-Semitic propaganda. I mean, it wasn't until 1964, nearly 30 years after the Nuremberg trials, 20 years after the Nuremberg trials, that they said that they no longer accused the Jewish people collectively of deicide.
Christopher.
I still don't think the apology is complete, but I can see the bad conscience that they must have about it. Now, you say that's just political opportunism, the alliance between Hitler, Mussolini, Franco, Salazar, all the other dictators and the church. I say it's not. I say it's the product of a long period of telling people who might not otherwise have got the idea, in every Mass, every Easter, that the Jewish people were their enemies. I think you can't do that and not expect bad behavior to be a consequence of it. And you just brushed it off and said, oh, well, people just make up ideologies to suit them. Actually, it wasn't very evolutionarily helpful for Jews to be driven out of Europe and murdered and their property taken. All societies that do that fall into ruin.
Christopher,
well, you say you were utilitarian.
Christopher, what point are you making? Who said it was?
Well, I'm saying your utilitarian point seems a bit thin in the face of that, doesn't it?
What?
But these things are just invented as and when.
Christopher, can I talk? Do utilitarians believe that everything that happens is for the good? Is that what you think a utilitarian is?
No. The utilitarian principle is most famously encapsulated as the greatest happiness for the greatest number.
That is what is to be desired, not what always happens. No. And I'm saying it's no less likely to happen under religious auspices than under secular auspices. I mean, these periods of history you're talking about are periods back when virtually everyone was religious. Pretty much every good thing and bad thing that happened was done by a religious person. But I just have to return to this silly point you brought up, where because I pointed to an atheist who'd done something bad, you turned around and made it sound like it was some inexcusable affront to you personally. And then I said, well, wait a second. When you do a comparable thing to a religious person, in the presence of a religious person, complain about some crime perpetrated by a religious person, should they be equally offended? And you went off on some weird tangent. I just don't, that's just a silly distraction. I mean, do you really think you should reasonably be...
I think you'll find that the digression is your fault. I said that I thought that a long religious preachment, in this case of anti-Semitism by Christianity, had terrible consequences, had made good people behave badly in a very epoch-making way. And you appear to say in riposte that the main preacher of that evil, Adolf Hitler, was in some way of my way of thinking about religion. I had to say I thought that was A, wrong, and B, without becoming tearful about it, more insulting than you might want to be. I mean, you should either say if you think that Nazism is a version of secularism, if you think so, or not. But don't try and just imply it. As for taking offense, look, man, I mean, every day I have to listen to religious people saying that the teachings of Darwin are false, that Jews should be killed, that homosexuals are wicked, that women... I mean, if I was insulted by this kind of thing, if I took offense, I'd have no time to do anything else. It's they who say they have the right to threaten me with death for offending them who are the problem. Don't try and put me on all fours with that either, please.
Well, I'm flattered that you feel a need to distract us from the actual issues.
I don't know. I think that was a digression. But I think you started it, but I think it was worth having.
Okay, so in the future, no one in a debate with you about whether religion is on balance a good thing or a bad thing, and by implication whether non-belief is more likely to be a good thing than a bad thing, will be allowed in your presence to point to anything an unbeliever has done that is bad. I can see how those debating rules would favor you, and I don't blame you for advocating them.
I will put myself in the safekeeping of the people who watch this item.
You will be in good hands,
and I'll ask them to write in if they say that you have summarized my opinion correctly.
Christopher, you don't have to worry. I assure you that on this issue of religion, you have many more followers on this website than I have. I've done the empirical work.
It's not a matter of a vote.
The commenters will be overwhelmingly on your side, and if that's your primary goal in life, you have arrived.
No, I wouldn't say that it was. Anyway, I don't think that I should take any more time with this. I'll just put myself in the keeping of the audience and see if anyone thinks you summarized my opinion correctly.
Okay. So we can move on then?
Well, what